Imagine sitting at home with your kids, then agents show up, force you outside in the rain, and take your property, and you've done nothing wrong. That just happened, and now DHS is under fire.
Madam Secretary, I have a question related to something more close to home for me in the community in El Paso with DHS employees. For decades, CBP employees who work at our land ports of entry have been contractually allowed by CBP to have an off-site location for their union. And this off-site location is completely funded by union dues, not by taxpayer money. And again, this was something agreed to in their contract. I was shocked and alarmed to learn that they were told by DHS they could no longer be off-site, and they were forced to come into a DHS facility in El Paso. It's a conference room, media training room. So that part of their contract, that longstanding agreement, was violated in my eyes. Are you aware of this at all?
I have heard about it, but I don't know the details of that agreement, so I can follow up with you and get that back to you. And if you would lay out the concerns for being co-located, I think that would be fantastic for me to know.
We will. We'll make sure to communicate with your team. Would love to work with you on this. The same has not been true for the Border Patrol Union. So there's disparate treatment, and additionally, just to very quickly lay out why it's important for union members to be able to speak to their union leaders in private, and being located in a small conference room, media training room, offers no privacy. There are other issues, but I look forward to working with you on that.
I do know that, the difference in the two unions is important, and I'll look into how those were interpreted. And I also know that the one union is located under the Treasury Union as well, and that defines some requirements and for how it's regulated and set out going forward. So I'll see if that is the determining factor on why there was a difference in how the locations were determined.
And I would ask, Madam Secretary, that you please allow the El Paso Union to continue to be housed off-site. It is their preference, doesn't impact the budget or appropriations. They pay for it. So I don't see a reason why this long-standing, decades-long situation should be changed. So would ask for your support for that, please.
I'll look into it.
Okay, perfect. I also wanted to ask you about this NBC News story, and I'll enter into the record this article as well. U.S. citizen family traumatized after ICE raided their Oklahoma home in search of someone else. And according to the local affiliate, KFOR, which was reporting on this story, immigration agents raided the home last week. They had a search warrant for the home, but the suspects listed on the warrant were no longer living in the home. The family was forced to wait outside in the rain during the search. A mother and her girls, all U.S. citizens. Their money was taken, their laptop, their cell phone. I asked you at the top of our first round if you believed it was important for DHS, and if you would attest to the fact that DHS needs to rectify any mistakes. If this were a mistake, will you ensure that this family, this U.S. citizen family, gets its property back in a timely manner?
Well, in that particular situation, the warrant for that situation was on the house and the facility, not on the individuals that were there. And so that house was being used for human smuggling. And so those operations were conducted against the facility. And even in that situation, there was some individuals there with the same last names and some of the similarities.
But if it were a mistake, Madam Secretary,
we believe everything was done appropriately, and we'll continue to make sure that it is done and handled appropriately.
All right. Well, appreciate you looking into it. Not my constituents, but you had mentioned in your testimony, and you've said previously, that the focus of your agency is to go after the worst of the worst, people who are here illegally. But we have seen reporting and spoken to individuals, we meaning Congress, that in fact, there have been abuses on that front. People with legal protections have been deported. I laid out in the first round U.S. citizen children. I don't know, and I asked, and you said you'd get back to me about whether parents actually filled out the ICE forms that are normally used for those processes. U.S. citizen families with nothing to do with human trafficking, and now DHS employees as well, in my view, have been subjected to an abuse of power. And we all swore an oath to the Constitution. This is a democratic republic. Rule of law is important, due process is important, and ultimately that will be my North Star, not just in this hearing, but throughout everything that I work on as a member of Congress. I thank you, Madam Secretary, and Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Imagine being a law-abiding American citizen, at home with your kids, and suddenly immigration agents storm in. They force you and your children out into the rain. They take your phones, your laptop, your cash, and only later do you realize the people they were looking for don't even live there anymore. That's exactly what happened in Oklahoma, and it became the centerpiece of a tense exchange between Congresswoman Veronica Escobar and DHS Secretary Kristi Noem during a recent hearing NBC News, K4. Now, Escobar wasn't just throwing out random grievances. She began by pointing to something that might sound small, but speaks volumes about how DHS wields its authority: the long-standing agreement that allowed Customs and Border Protection employees in El Paso to have an off-site union office. It was funded by union dues, not taxpayer dollars, and it had existed for decades. Then suddenly, DHS said no more, forcing them into a cramped government conference room where privacy was compromised. For union members, privacy isn't a luxury, it's essential. Workers need to be able to voice grievances without fear of being monitored by the very agency they're negotiating against. Escobar argued this wasn't just inconvenient, it was a violation of trust and an erosion of worker rights, C-SPAN hearing. But it was the Oklahoma raid that escalated the stakes. Escobar confronted Noem with a simple question. If a mistake was made, if innocent citizens had their property seized in error, would DHS return it quickly and make things right? That question cut to the heart of accountability. Noem's defense was telling. She emphasized that the warrant was for the House, not the individuals. In other words, the government acted within its legal scope. But that explanation glosses over the human cost. For the family caught in the middle, it doesn't matter if the warrant was technically correct. What matters is that their sense of safety, their trust in the system, and their constitutional protections felt shattered in that moment. This isn't an isolated story. Across the country, there have been similar reports of citizens being mistakenly swept up in immigration enforcement. Escobar reminded Noem that DHS claims to prioritize the worst of the worst, dangerous criminals and traffickers. Yet evidence suggests that sometimes people with legal protections and even U.S. citizen families have been subjected to raids, detentions, and deportations they should never have experienced, Yahoo News. And here's the bigger issue Escobar was pressing. The oath that every public servant takes is not to an agency, not to a policy, but to the Constitution. That means due process. That means equal protection under the law. That means acknowledging mistakes and fixing them, not brushing them aside as collateral damage in the pursuit of enforcement. When the government shrugs off these lapses, even when they affect citizens, it sends a chilling message that efficiency or expedience matters more than justice. Think about what that does to communities. For immigrants and citizens alike, fear grows that doors could be kicked in at any moment, that private lives can be upended in the name of enforcement. For DHS employees themselves, watching their union agreements dissolved without explanation, it fuels a sense that the agency prioritizes control over fairness. Trust erodes both inside and outside the system. And this is why Escobar's closing words matter so much. She said her North Star is the Constitution, due process, and the rule of law. That was not just rhetoric. It was a reminder that in a democratic republic, the power of government is supposed to be limited, accountable, and answerable to the people, not the other way around. So the question we're left with is this: how do we balance security with liberty? Should agencies like ICE and DHS be required to issue restitution when they raid the wrong home, when they seize the wrong property, when they traumatize innocent families? Or does forcing that kind of accountability risk slowing down operations that target real criminals and traffickers? I want to hear what you think. Do you believe DHS handled this raid appropriately, or did Escobar expose a deeper problem with overreach and abuse of power? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Because this isn't just about one family in Oklahoma, it's about what kind of government we're willing to accept and what kind of country we want to live in. So the question we're left with is this: how do we balance security with liberty? Should agencies like ICE and DHS be required to issue restitution when they raid the wrong home, when they seize the wrong property, when they traumatize innocent families? Or does forcing that kind of accountability risk slowing down operations that target real criminals and traffickers? I want to hear what you think. Do you believe DHS handled this raid appropriately, or did Escobar expose a deeper problem with overreach and abuse of power? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this isn't just about one family in Oklahoma. It's about what kind of government we're willing to accept and what kind of country we want to live in.